Party people, welcome to the Party Podcast, hosted by the Party Boys, Mike and Skip. We got a party podcast coming at you. Skip, what's up? What's the haps?
Well, it's been 2 weeks since we last met.
It has been.
And we'll get to that because I think you went on a binge trip.
I did.
I
went on a cool trip.
But first, let me talk about what I've been up to, which isn't a whole lot. I've been playing a whole lot. I have been playing a whole lot of The Witcher 3. I'm playing my second playthrough. I'm nearing the end of the main story, and then I'm going to move into the expansions finally. I just wanted to get through the main story before moving into the expansions again so that I could pick up all the side quests and stuff that I missed.
Blood and Wine just came out, right?
Yeah, just 2 days ago.
Okay.
So
I heard it's really good.
I mean, yeah, I've heard
Michael's
both of them
been
are really, really good.
raving about the second one.
Yeah. It's a whole new area, like a huge area with a city and everything.
The size of Velen?
I think they said it was about the size of Velen, yeah.
Damn. Okay.
So, yeah,
That's
it's a big expansion. I'm really, really excited for it. And did you see the trailer for The Witcher 3 that it was just a CGI cinematic trailer with the woman singing and then she turns into like a monster of some sort? The main menu of the game, which usually shows Geralt like sitting by a fire or something like that. Well, it still shows him sitting by a fire, but he's in the new area, and in the background there's a barn that looks like the one in the trailer, and it has a woman walking back and forth in the entrance of the barn, and she's singing that song. So I wonder if that quest happens in the
Maybe.
Conjecture, but I'm really looking forward to playing that. It looks awesome, and I think it's about vampires, which is one of the coolest things in The Witcher. Their like iteration of vampires is really great. Like I just played a side quest where there's a vampire who prefers drunk people. It's like a alcoholic vampire, so it looks for blood with alcohol in it, and so it like stalks the bar. And to kill him, you have to get drunk and wander around outside of the bar singing loudly to attract it. It's great. I love that game. And I also
puts good little twists on all the classic like fantasy creatures.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the werewolves are done really well too.
Yeah, everything about that game is fucking great. And the books, I've finished the first book, which is a compilation of short stories, and it was good. I'm a little bit of the ways through the second one, which I think is a novel, not a compilation. I don't know, but I've enjoyed them so far. Not much else to say about that, really. I also forgot to mention, I think this was like a few weeks ago, but I don't think I mentioned it. Did I mention I tried the new Rocket League game mode where it's basketball?
You said it sucked, right?
No.
Wait. Who said... Somebody played that and told me it sucked.
I like it. I haven't played a whole lot of it, but I like it. I think it's only
maybe it was a new Rocket Lab you were talking about that wasn't hoops? I don't know. You could just go on.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it's hoops, and so the goals are they're not very high off the ground, and they're pretty large, and you can drive under them, but the ball can't roll under it. Like they have invisible walls where the balls hit.
I played a couple games of it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun. I don't know. I just like that they're supporting that game and trying all sorts of wacky new shit, which is exactly what you should do with that kind of game.
Yeah, I heard that they're adding a game mode with like pillars in the middle of the field.
They can do whatever they fucking want. That's the wonderful thing about it. And it keeps me coming back. Like every time they update it, it's like, oh, I gotta try that out. And so, God, and apparently my brother-in-law and his friends are super into it, but they're on the PS4. I need to get them on a PC. But yeah, that's the kind of game you can introduce to someone who doesn't play a lot of games and they'll like it. But anyway, we've talked a lot about that before. I also this was weird. I forgot about Memorial Day, but I was rewatching Band of Brothers just out of coincidence. Like something reminded me of it. And then I found out there's like a marathon on Memorial. Like suddenly everyone was talking about it on like Twitter and shit, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Because I was just rewatching it for no reason. But anyway, I rewatched Band of Brothers,
so
the whole series.
You accidentally honored the troops.
Exactly.
Okay.
I accidentally became patriotic and was overwhelmed with the urge to remember our fallen veterans. But Band of Brothers is really, really, really good, and I love it.
I've been
rewatching,
kind of related, Generation Kill, I've been
That's
watching
another good
again.
one. I don't know if I
So
ever
good.
completed it, but I watched most of it.
The last episode's the best
Another
episode.
one that I didn't complete, but I was enjoying is The Pacific. It's not as good as Band of Brothers. It's not as like cohesive.
That's the
Um,
Spielberg one, right?
yeah, I mean it's the same. It's mostly the same people who made Band of Brothers, but it just doesn't have that same emotional connection. I feel like you don't get connected with the characters as well, and it just. But it'd be really interesting to see that side of the war because it's not portrayed very often. Um, so I might check out the Pacific too. But God, Band of Brothers, man, it's good. The episode with the medic where he's running around during Bastogne and he's hopping between foxholes and stuff, and it's cool. Like they just give you glimpses of they kind of revolutionized how you do like a war movie, even if it's not a movie. Just some really creative stuff. I cannot recommend that more. If you haven't seen Band of Brothers, you need to see it. And that's it for me. I don't think I have anything else to talk about. So, let's talk about your apparently busy
Eventful
2
2
weeks.
weeks. Eventful. So, I'll go one by one. I went out to Vegas, Sin City, for the first time. Well, actually, I'd gone before, but not when I was old enough to gamble or do anything. So,
Right.
this was like my first real, trip to Vegas. And my first night, I went out, it was me and my dad, and we went
Nice.
down to downtown Vegas, Fremont Street, with like all the super cheap tables, like $5 blackjack, and I fucking killed. I won $700.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
And
Nice.
it was fucking great. Like I was playing craps and blackjack and roulette, and this black guy at the blackjack table next to me who was like super smashed on Hennessy was trying to sell me cocaine. It was
Great.
nice.
That's
He
a real
said,
Vegas
"I got the
experience."
shiniest shit on the strip, man." Like, okay, yeah, really fun night. I learned like that you're not supposed to hold the dice for craps with two hands because then they
Oh.
get like freaked out. So you have to do it with one, and you have to make sure the throw.
Are they
goes all the way
afraid that
across
you're
the
like
table.
throwing it in a certain way if you
Well,
hold
yeah,
it?
they're super strict about that. So they had like 4 people standing at the table, and it was only me and my dad playing on it. And my dad tried to get fancy with his throws because he's
Yeah.
like, showing me how it's done. And he accidentally threw one off the table.
Oh,
and they had
no.
like this procedure for getting it back. Like they had one of the dealers pick it up and give it to a pit boss who like inspects it and then puts it away. Just really interesting, really overwhelming too. Like with all the different lights and just cocktails coming to you constantly. Like
I guess that's the idea, right?
yeah, it was a really fun experience. Now, I didn't just straight up win. Like, the last night I was there, I wanted to try again. I wanted to try to gamble some more. So I just took $80 down to a blackjack table, lost it all almost as fast as you possibly could, and I'm like, okay, time to stop. So, yeah, that was my gambling experience there. Went to the Hoover Dam, saw Beatles Love, that show. Which was cool. It's like a Cirque du Soleil thing. The music is better than the actual performance, but it was cool. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about Vegas. Don't want to tell vacation stories all day. I watched The Big Short. The movie about the financial crisis came out last year.
Oh,
I thought it was
yeah.
a really cool movie. But I think a lot of that just comes from that being stuff I'm really, really interested in, the subject matter.
Right.
Um,
What's the perspective in that movie? Like who are you following?
So you follow 3 different like groups, I'd say. There's what's his name? Fuck, I can't remember Christian Bale. You follow Christian Bale's character. He's like a numbers whiz, and he was the first guy to delve into what are called collateralized debt obligations and look at the individual loans in them and see that they were founded on shitty loans that when the adjustable rates would kick in, people would go delinquent on, and it would cause everything to collapse. So you follow him, and everybody doesn't believe him because he's betting
Classic.
against the housing market, which is always so strong.
Yeah.
And so like his investors get pissed at him for making these crazy bets, they think. Then there's Steve Carell's character. He's like this really angry Jewish guy who runs a fund at Morgan Stanley, and he kind of like has it out for the banks. He kind of hates himself too, and so yeah, he's got that more like moralizing perspective on it. Ryan Gosling works with him, though. He's kind of like a classic Wall Street asshole.
I didn't realize it was so star-studded.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's these two real young investors from like Colorado who had like a successful strategy of making pessimistic investments. They thought that people undervalue the things that they underestimate the probability of things they don't want to have happen.
Right.
So they just bet pessimistically. And it's a true story, or I bet like Hollywood true, but they actually break away and face the camera and explain, okay, this really isn't how this happened, but we're just doing it this way for the movie.
So they break the fourth wall and tell you, like, by the way, this is dramatized.
Yeah, like there's a scene
Weird.
where they find this brief in the lobby left over, and they just happen upon it. And then one of the guys faces the camera and is like, that's not really how it happened. My friend, he was at a lecture and he heard about it, and then I read about it in Investors Quarterly.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's a cool movie. Directed well, and I think most importantly is it doesn't take the super cynical. Well, I guess it is pretty cynical, but
Kind of
it's
have
not.
to be about this.
It's not the Occupy Wall Street kind of
Right.
tone. It's more of like institutional failure kind of tone.
Yeah.
So cool movie. I recommend it. I also saw Raging Bull. That movie's a masterpiece. Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
The black and white boxing movie with
Haven't seen it.
it's really good. Don't want to talk much about it though. Not much to say. Just as good as people say it is. I played Uncharted 4. It's the best Uncharted game. It continues the series' completely baffling lack of pacing ability. Like,
Right. I've heard that.
yeah, they can't do it right in any of these games. They always screw up something. And this time, instead of padding out the end, they pad out the beginning. So
Yeah.
at
what I
first
heard.
when I was playing it, I actually kind of had buyer's remorse. Like, I paid
Right.
$60 for it, and it's just endless platforming on these nondescript gray cliffs while you talk to your brother, who's basically exactly the same as Nathan Drake. And so there's like no real dynamic there. It's just kind of flat. Like, one character will say, "Huh, I think we should drop down there. Huh, you don't want to break your legs there, Nate." And it's just the same energy from both of them back and forth. But it gets a lot better, and it has by far the best action set piece in the series, in the form of the car chase. I think they showed part of it at E3, where you're kind of driving through the city and
You're bashing through a bunch of walls and shit.
I don't know if they showed the second part of that, which is the most impressive
It
part.
stops when you're swinging down like around the bridge and you
Yeah.
hit into some boards, and that's when it cuts to title screen or
The
whatever.
part after that is the best action
That's-
set piece.
yeah.
Where you grapple hook onto a like crane truck,
Yeah.
and then you kind of get pulled through the slums and are literally being dragged through the mud by a whole convoy of vehicles, and you have to crawl your way up, but people start shooting at you, so then you're like skating on the mud and like shooting people at the same time.
Right.
And then you jump from car to car and get on a motorcycle. It's just this elaborate sequence. And then the rest of the game continued that standard of quality. Nothing quite that good. That was the high point by far, but the rest of the game was substantially better than the first part.
Video games in general, I think indie games have found a niche where they can get away with, not get away with, they can more easily find how their game is paced and make it feel like a nice cohesive experience. AAA games have trouble with that. Like, I can't think of a whole lot of games that do have good pacing if they're more than like 6 hours. I feel kind of bad for them because it's like, how do you do that? I mean, it's a video game. It's an interactive medium. You don't know when people are picking it up and playing it and putting it down. You don't know what parts people are getting stuck on, that kind of thing. How do you, if you're not like Portal where you can finish it in one sitting, it's got to be a huge challenge to keep the pacing natural feeling. I'm surprised that TV shows do it as well as they do as well. Like, that's a tough issue. Once you move past like, oh, people probably aren't going to finish this in one sitting, what do you do? I have a lot of sympathy for them for that.
Yeah, some developers can do it and some can't, and Naughty Dog just cannot figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's not just like the gameplay sequences in terms of how interesting the scenarios are that they pace poorly. It's also the gameplay itself. So they introduced a much more in-depth stealth system than the other games. It kind of carried over that Last of Us kind of stealth where enemies remember your last known position and things like that. At first, it's kind of stupid because there's just lots of big open spaces and not much, room to actually use the stealth. It just is a lot of waiting around for people to be alone and just not all that great. But then later, you go to the jungle and it's actually really, really fun to stealth completely. And that's something the series, you could always kind of stealth for like a second, but then you'd inevitably get caught up in a shootout. This time, you can go all stealth, and it works.
That's cool.
So yeah, really cool game overall. Best story of the series. Nothing to write home about, but it's, there's stuff going on, which is more than you can say for most of these games.
Speaking of pacing issues, another thing about Witcher 3, in my second playthrough, this has been very apparent. In my first playthrough, it was also... There was a certain spot, and we've mentioned this, there's a certain spot where I stopped playing half because MGS5 came out, and half because it's a point where like it gives you a quest with like 5 objectives, and you have to do each objective, and each objective is its own little storyline, and it's too much. You feel overwhelmed. You don't want to do all, like, you don't know where to start, and it's like 20 hours into the game where you're like, oh god, I'm getting a little burnt out if you've been playing a lot of it.
Which part are you referring to?
The Dandelion quest in Novigrad.
Oh, right.
You're trying to find Dandelion.
That was about where I stopped for a couple
It
months.
seems like that's where most people stopped the first time. And I think a lot of that does have to do with most people were around that point when Metal Gear Solid 5 came out. But it is a stopping point. It's like a point where people kind of go, okay, well, I'll finish this tomorrow, and then they never pick it back up. And then there's a couple other points like that in the game. And then there's one quest, not one quest. There's one sequence in particular where you have to enter the Isle of Mists, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it tells you like, oh, you might fail some quests if you do this quest. Turn back now unless you're done with everything, and then continue on. And when you continue on, the next like 5 hours are basically not linear, but you're stuck in the quest. You can't just like break out of it and go explore or anything. Like you're just doing quest after quest after quest after quest, and that's terrible pacing. It's really weird for like an open world game and everything. It's just a really, really weird design choice, and that game has bad pacing, like just bad pacing, definitely. But yeah, definitely. It's, as Kai Talo says in the chat, it's still a great game, definitely. That does not at all ruin it or anything. It's just bizarre.
I'll have to see when I get there.
Yeah. So how far are you in The Witcher 3?
I just recently broke Yen's heart up on the boat.
I forgot you're a Triss guy. Oh my god.
Well, I'm gonna play both. I'm gonna replay them. But Witcher 2 was the first one I played, so I didn't really care that much about Yennefer. I only met Yennefer in this game.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Well, if you're
there,
so you're in Skellige.
Yeah, I think I'm finishing up Skellige. I think I'm...
Did you do the quest where you find the king's children and what they're trying to do to prove their worth to become the successor?
Not yet, but I just finished the garden quest. Where
it's technically an optional quest, I think, but
that one's optional.
The one with the king's children.
But I want to see how that.
But it does. It also affects the main quest. Like if you do it, then it affects the main quest. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's definitely worth doing. It's a good quest. It's
okay.
There's one part in particular in that where it's like just really cool to me. But that's one thing that The Witcher 3 also does really well is each segment, like each kind of quest line or little storyline, has something about it that is just really memorable and really great, really unique, and none of it feels like it just drags. I appreciate that about that game. But anyway, continue on with all your bullshit.
It's not bullshit. It's my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about all I have to say about Uncharted 4. I bought a new Nintendo 3DS XL just on a complete impulse. with some of my Vegas money, and my brother lent me Majora's Mask 3D, and I've been playing through that again, and it's so much better on the 3DS. It benefits a lot from the changes that they make.
Yeah.
Like, one of the most cumbersome parts of that game was the notebook. So there's a lot you have to keep track of like where NPCs are going to be at certain times of the day, and when you need to get to certain places to trigger quest events, and it's a lot to keep track of. And so I remember playing through it the first time as a Wii one. I had an actual physical notebook that I kept with me so I could write the stuff down, because it was just so cumbersome to go through those slow menus. But now, on this baby, you can just keep that stuff on the bottom screen, and the map you can have there too, and the controls are leagues better. There's a little C-stick nub, so you can actually have, for the first time in the series, legitimate dual analog stick controls so that you can look around. It makes a big difference.
For this notebook, does it automatically update, or do you update it?
It updates with certain information, but it's not as explicit as something like a Skyrim quest log, where it puts an objective marker at certain places and describes everything that you know and everything you have to do. It's more like not a list, but a collection of information about what a character wants, or what they're trying to accomplish, or where they'll be. And you can also view like a schedule view, and all of that stuff is new, or at least the format is new. It's been a while since I played it, but overall, really, really liking what they changed.
Sounds like a pretty good balance, because like I part of me says I wasn't a fan of Zelda games, but I just didn't play them. I'm sure I would have liked them if I did, but those old games where there's those tedious things about them, where you're having to keep a separate notebook and stuff like that. Part of it is just tedious, and you hate it, and you definitely don't want to do it in the modern context of like all these games that do that kind of stuff for you. But at the same time, like, that's part of the game, and that's part of a lot of those tedious things that I had to do during that time of the gaming industry. I kind of it's nostalgia, but there's an appealing aspect to it where it feels like, I don't know, endearing.
Yeah,
but,
I think they struck a good balance here. I know, just because of the complexity of some of the quests, I might still write a couple things down, but it's to the point where you got to figure some things out and think critically about the information that you have, but it gives you enough that the N64 version didn't, so that you can keep track of that information easier and put it together into useful, actionable quests.
Yeah, someone in chat says I always played Morrowind with a notebook. That's something that I think was a flaw in Morrowind, and that's coming from someone who, that's one of my favorite games ever. But it had a journal, but the journal was in chronological order. So like, you update a quest with more information, it just gives you that one update as the latest entry in the journal, and then you're on to the next thing. And so if you want to like go back and find something, you have to figure out like when it happened and just go back page and find out. Like, it was just a nightmare. And I think they eventually updated the game to separate it by quest lines or something like that, which was a lot better. But at launch, it was not a good system.
Somebody corrected me. Wind Waker and I guess Twilight Princess 2 did have the dual analog. I don't know why I felt like this was the first one with it. I guess because it's so much better. It's such an obvious improvement to have dual analog controls in a game that never had it, that for some reason I just started thinking that way. But I wasn't.
It sounds like the update is very similar to the one they did with Wind Waker. Because I played the original Wind Waker I streamed it, and the chat, everything that I would complain about in that game, the chat would be like, "Oh yeah, well the update fixed that, the HD remake." So
yeah, the changes I'm noticing in this are a lot more substantial. Because I have the Wind Waker HD, and there are a lot of clear improvements in that game.
Yeah.
But there's more changes in Majora's Mask, and they're not changes to design, even though there's some of that. It's just little pieces of streamlining, like the bank is now in South Clocktown, so it's easier to access, and just a lot of tiny changes like that add up to a much more enjoyable experience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's Majora's Mask. Liking it. Good. And, so Skippy knows about this, and I don't want to get too specific, but, I got a big boy job.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
landed a pretty big deal kind of job, and, I'll be starting in, like, 2 weeks. And
Making the big bucks.
yeah,
Don't need the
I'm
podcast
really
anymore.
excited. Yeah, you know, real life, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big boy now.
Congrats.
I can wear my big boy Pampers.
I roasted the shit out of you on Twitter about it.
Yeah. Totally, you totally pwned me, man. I got epic pwned.
Yeah.
Can somebody put a 100
I got all the faves.
fire emoji down there? That'd be nice in the chat. Okay, Overwatch.
Yes, Overwatch.
Have you been playing it?
None at all. I haven't bought it.
Really?
I don't think I want it. I know it's good, and I take everyone's word for it, and I'm sure I would enjoy it. I don't want to buy it. I just... Let me tell you, before you start talking about it, let me tell you my reasons, and this is coming from someone who hasn't played it, and who has done kind of minimal research on it. First of all, it seems to me there is a lack of, like, maps, basically. Like, each game mode has, like, a few maps. Not a huge deal, because it seems like the maps are pretty expansive and have a lot of diversity to them. But I'm paying $40, which, hey, at least it's not $60, but it just seems like a pretty bare bones game. It's kind of the same thing that was stopping me from buying Siege in that aspect, which is like, I still almost not regret, but I bought Siege at $40, and I was like, it still seems like not a lot of content. Also, so it's Team Fortress 2. From what I can tell, it's Team Fortress 2 with more interesting classes that have abilities and stuff like that. And I loved Team Fortress 2, but the days of Team Fortress 2 are long gone. And I don't know that I can play... Like, I don't know if I could pick up and play another Team Fortress 2 now. Like, that kind of game again. Like, it just kind of feels like that time is over. and I just don't want that in my life right now. I don't know. There's a lot of... It feels like that game, by the look of it, is so designed around let's appeal to the most common denominator and make it super, super casual to the point where I've heard of people playing it on PC with a controller and having no problem. And that's just... Ugh, it gives me chills. I don't like that. But I don't know. It looks cool. It looks polished. But...
Okay. In order. I don't think the game is sparse for content at all. It has, from what I can recall of the maps in the game, there's about as many as there were in Team Fortress 2 when that came out. Maybe more. The maps are all interesting. I remember the layouts for all of them. I've got, you memorize it very quickly because they're very well designed. They all feel very different from each other, and they all sort of move the match along in a different sort of way. They each have their own... I wouldn't call them quirks because they're not that, specific to each one, but they're just little dynamics that the shape of the map will introduce into any given game. So, yeah, I think there's quite a bit of variety in the maps that are in the game. There's really like 3 kind of game modes. There's King of the Hill, Capture Point, Payload, and then there's like a hybrid of the Capture Point and the Payload. I don't really need more than that. I mean, I'd appreciate it, but, it's something that I would be totally fine getting in updates later. What else? What you were talking about? Oh, yeah. So $40. I've been seeing lots of articles on some of our favorite websites, like Polygon, Kotaku, and they have similar headlines, like, is Overwatch really worth $40? And, I think it pretty obviously is. And I'm not saying that it's a game for everybody, that everybody will enjoy, because some people don't like first-person shooters, some people don't like the very character-specific stuff. You said that it's a little stale for you now because you've had your fill of TF2. I'll get to that point in a second. But for the amount of time that you can put into this game and enjoy it, it's more than worth $40. I can easily see myself playing hundreds of hours of this game. I don't really get the argument there that it's not worth $40 for whatever reason. Is it just because it's multiplayer only? I mean,
No, it's not. So it's not just a factor of it's not worth $40 because this is how much content it has and it doesn't have a single player campaign and all that stuff. This is the amount of maps and this is the amount of characters. It's, to me, a lot of the $40 stuff, and I think this is true for a lot of people, it comes down to that game has entirely the look and feel of a free-to-play game. And Team Fortress 2 is a free-to-play game, by the way. And
it has the look and feel of a free-to-play game. Care to
yes,
elaborate?
you've got tons of skins. Apparently, just a huge amount of skins. Like, you can change the skins of the characters and the guns and all that crap. So skins, that's a huge free-to-play thing, definitely. It's a Blizzard game, who are the makers of fucking Hearthstone, which is their biggest thing right now, which is a free-to-play game. And I just feel like that's the direction that it'll inevitably go in, being a $40 release, multiplayer only, game full of skins that are unlocks, that are, and it's totally ready to be updated and then slowly merged into a free-to-play. It feels like I'm going to pay $40 for it, and then it's going to get the same treatment that Team Fortress 2 got, except it'll be accelerated because that's already an existing format, an existing path for those games to go down.
I see it going more the way of CS:GO. CS:GO is not a free-to-play game. It's got a shit ton of skins, way more gambling elements than even Overwatch has. Overwatch has a cash shop for monetization. You can buy loot crates. They call them loot crates. Loot boxes. Loot Crate is that stupid company that sponsors every podcast in the world.
By the way,
it's about Loot Crate, Stamps.com, Dollar Shave Club. Crate. Sign up. But
you're lagging really bad.
Well, what am I gonna do about it? I can see it happening too. The frames are just leaking, like a boat, like a rickety boat.
Yeah.
But what were you saying about? Oh yeah, the look and feel. Okay, so the actual design of the game is not like a free-to-play game. It's got that tight, original vanilla TF2 design of each character has one kit. You know exactly what you're getting into. Can you still hear me?
Team Fortress 2 changed, though. Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay,
Team Fortress 2 changed, and
there they go. Okay,
I feel like it's inevitable that Overwatch is going to go down the same path.
I think that's kind of a guess. I don't think it's inevitable. I think it's possible. I don't really see a reason that it's particularly.
Why are you lagging so bad? This is almost impossible to talk to you.
If I knew, I would do something about it.
Jesus. I can hear most of what you're saying anyway. But so yeah, it's just too similar to Team Fortress 2, and I was burned on Team Fortress 2, man. Burnt real bad. And
I think you're wrong there too.
That it's similar to Team Fortress 2?
No, not that it's similar to Team Fortress 2. That it's too similar to Team Fortress 2. It is a character-based shooter where the classes have roles, and so it's similar in that way. However, I think that the number of heroes it introduces a significant difference. And that difference is there aren't roles that your team has to fill every time. If you're playing like a 9-player Team Fortress 2 match, like a capture point match, you want an engineer, you want a medic, you want a sniper, you want a soldier, a scout, and everybody needs to do their jobs, and it's clear what jobs need to be done. In Overwatch, you have 6 players, and what is it, like 16 heroes to choose from? And so it becomes less about we need to fill these roles, and they have to be done this way.
You still have the same roles, right? You still have the healer, the DPS, the defender.
Well, because that's about all the permutations of ways to manipulate.
I know, but
health
I'm just saying, like,
in a video game.
You're just saying that, like, okay, the medic is split up into 3 different classes, but they all do effectively they do the same thing.
They don't, and that's part of what makes it interesting. So, for example, there's Mercy, the very traditional medic. She's got a beam that heals people, and can do double damage if you want. Then there's Lucio, the guy who looks like he's from Jet Set Radio, and he also heals, but he does it in a different way. He heals a radius around him constantly. So not only is that just changing the way that he heals, it changes the way that the team moves through the map. So if you play with a Lucio, it means your team's staying closer together. However, if you're playing with Zenyatta as a healer, he's incredibly low on health, but he can give a person indefinite healing. So he gives you a harmony orb, and it just stays with you, and you continue to get heals no matter where this healer is. So that encourages a team to spread out. And so that sort of dynamic exists for all the different roles, that there's certain things that need to be done, but they can be done in different ways that are substantially different in gameplay terms.
But in the end, you're playing the exact same game modes as Team Fortress 2, which I'm not criticizing the game for being like Team Fortress 2. I think it took way too long for games to do the Team Fortress 2 style of gameplay. But you're doing those exact same game modes. The maps look like they're about the same size, and the flow of the game looks almost exactly the same. Where it's like you enter these choke points, and you're having to run back. Like the defending team has to run back, and it just looks real similar, and that's why I foresee the future.
About as far as it goes, I think it looks real
but
similar.
I think that's a really important. I mean, that's the core of the game.
The look.
The core. No, okay. Well, the look. So here's another thing that I didn't mention. At first I didn't care. At first I didn't care at all. That it had kind of shitty everything. Like the whole style of it was just. It's just shitty. It just sucks.
No.
It sucks. It sucks.
It doesn't.
It has no consistency whatsoever. There is absolutely no consistency in
there is.
It except for the slightly cartoony look. You've got characters that are completely different with no. Like, who are these fucking people? You've got the guy with the fucking boombox. You've got a robot shooting orbs. You've got a fucking super serious dragon guy. You've got the fucking die.
That
Everything
guy is so funny. One of the funniest characters
and
in recent memory. God,
if it played with that, like,
Reaper is.
if it felt like it knew it was stupid and it was trying to be stupid,
it's pretty like that is the edgiest.
It's so serious.
Character.
It's so serious.
That's why it's funny. If he was cracking jokes, it wouldn't be as funny. He has to be totally dead serious. Shadow the Hedgehog, Hitler, edgelord, teleporting behind you and unloading on, like spinning around with little shotguns. Like
in the game, they're always like having this banner and stuff, and it just sounds so forced and terrible to me.
It's not.
It sounds awful. I hate it.
They don't. You say that they always banter. They banter in the spawn once every like 3 games or so, and you hear one line.
Ugh.
And I think that the visual design is pretty consistent. The characters look pretty different from each other. It's definitely not as coherent as Team Fortress 2. That had a very specific artistic direction, and it did it perfectly.
The skins completely changed the characters in some cases too. Like the die guy like turns into like a guy with like a skull cap or something.
That's just without a mask.
But it looks completely different. Like it completely changes like who he is.
No, it doesn't. It changes nothing. Well, sorry, it does change the look, but it doesn't change the silhouette, and that's the important thing.
Okay, I'm not talking about the gameplay though. I'm just talking about the style of it. I just despise it. I hate it. I hate it. It started with those cinematic trailers that are all awful.
Personal preference.
It is. You're right. But it's my preference, and my preference is that I hate it.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's some problems with the visual design. Like, things can get very noisy in team fights, but that's also part of the enjoyment of it, or how just chaotic things can get.
Yeah, it's a little chaotic.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you're a hater.
Would you
That's what I
would you
think.
be able to tell the difference between the characters very easily if it didn't have their names in red or
Yeah,
blue above their head?
yeah.
Because to me, glancing at it, it just looks.
Because you can see if your teammates see someone and they have a line of sight on them and you're not there, then you see the enemy's silhouette only through the
Yeah.
walls, and I immediately know who everyone is, and you learn that very, very quickly.
Casual.
Casual, because I fucking figured out something.
See
really
through
obvious.
walls.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I
This
mean,
is super-
I don't hate the game, and I just certainly don't hate that people like the game. Well, I kind of hate the game, but I don't hate that people like the game. Like, I think it's fine that the game exists and that people like it, but I feel like I would hate it. Like, everything about it. It just... Ugh.
I
And I mark my words. If it doesn't go free to play, it's still going to get barged down with so much content that it completely destroys what the game was when people enjoyed it, and it becomes a fucking monstrosity. And
if they start
maybe Blizzard
introducing
will handle
new
that
kits,
better.
if they start introducing new kits, I think you might be right. But the way the game is designed opens up a much more positive possibility. And that's just the addition of more heroes. The problem in TF2, once they started adding a shit ton of new weapons for every class, is that when you see a scout running around the corner, you have no idea what they can do to you. And that is a fundamental problem that can't be corrected at this point.
And I do think that they've set themselves up for a better trajectory in that sense where, okay, we can just add more classes. And so if you know the classes,
Exactly. They can just add a new hero, and if you see it, you know exactly what it can do and what it can't do and what its weaknesses are and what's strong against it. Just a little tangent. Another way that it's substantially different from Team Fortress 2 is the counter-picking element in a match. So a very real part of this game is changing which hero you're playing during the course of a match. If you feel like something's not working, or if the enemy's team composition is beating yours, then you should change which heroes you're playing. And so that becomes a sort of strategic element is, okay, is our team composed in a way that can effectively play against the way the other team is composed? And should we change now that we've reached a different choke point on the map? That's a very real element of it too. So it's not as, I guess, singular an experience as TF2 was in that way. In TF2, you kind of if you start as the medic, you finish as the medic.
Yeah,
like that's
in
just
general.
how it goes, and you kind of are singularly directed toward the end at all times, and you're doing your job. That it's not quite the same in that way. I think that somebody in the chat there, I'm not gonna read through to find the name, was correct when they said that most of the similarities are superficial. To actually play the game, it plays substantially different from TF2.
Okay. So there's one more thing, and I don't know the extent to which this might be true, but going along with this is a game for casual babies line of thought. So first of all, there's been a lot of criticism thrown around. Have you seen the hitboxes and how they're fucked up? I think that this is a little overblown from the way it looks, but apparently the hitboxes, like especially for headshots, the head is way bigger than it should be, and like you can like shoot over someone's shoulder and it'll kill him. And it depends on the weapon and the class and all that stuff. That feels like okay, whatever. It's a casual enough game that like it just kind of wants you to. It doesn't feel like it's going for the twitch accuracy kind of gameplay, and I'm okay with that. But the most serious accusation I've heard is that there might be some kind of, and I don't know how this would work, but there might be some kind of like rubber banding element to it where it forces a more even match to happen. Like, do you ever just get like stomped, or is it always a close match?
It's not always a close match. But Team Fortress 2 had spawn rubber banding, where the length of the spawn timer, the respawn timer, would change depending on like what points you've captured and things like that. I haven't actually noticed substantial differences in the respawn timers for Overwatch. So there might actually be less of that, if there is any at all.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe.
more what's keeping the games close is the actual design of the game. I noticed that a lot of King of the Hill games are pretty close, and I think it's the overtime that lets that happen. There's a pretty generous overtime window, and so even if the other team has basically captured it, as long as there's space on that overtime bar, then standing on the point just a pixel on will stop it, and so there's lots of opportunity to come back. But I wouldn't say there's anything top-down,
Yeah.
like, forcing that to happen.
I just heard that accusation thrown without any proof whatsoever. But and then
But
the last thing,
there are definite stomps. Like, sometimes a team is just, they have you figured out,
Yeah.
they're better. You
well,
said,
good. I mean, that should happen.
this is a little thing. You said that it's not as Twitch gameplay focused. This is another thing I like about it, is that it totally depends on what class you're playing.
Sure.
There are some characters that are completely Twitch gameplay focused, where it's all about your aim and moving around really fast and pressing the right buttons really quickly and aiming in exactly the right spots. And there's other characters where you're right. If, like, for example, Lucio, you could probably play him just as well with a controller as with a mouse and keyboard. That's not true of a lot of the characters, though. That would be miserable to play as the snipers that way.
Right.
And a lot of the general offensive classes, too. So, I appreciate that it accommodates a lot of different gameplay styles and makes them useful.
All right. Last thing. Someone mentioned this in chat, and I've seen this. This is apparently true. The tick rate of the servers is absurdly low. Have you heard of this? Where it's a 20 tick.
That's good.
No, apparently that's
Wait
like.
a minute. Oh, I'm getting it mixed up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, I want to say that's a third of Counter Strikes, or maybe even lower than that. And people complain about Counter Strikes. I'm not sure. I don't know the technicals on that stuff, but I've heard a lot of complaints about that, about how like it kind of smooths over some issues with the netcode and everything. And I've even heard of people having like weird lag issues where like you can't move for in
That's
weird
happened to me.
times and stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's only if you don't have a very good connection.
Now,
But
that could be there. They have like the infrastructure for a competitive mode. Like there's a rank thing on your profile that doesn't do anything yet, and they said it'll come in like a month or so. So it could be that the quick play servers will use a lower tick rate than the competitive servers.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't blame them for trying to economize that stuff. But do you think they'll try to turn it into an esport?
They haven't yet. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
I know that there's some esport shit happening with it, like marketing wise, but
there's the
it doesn't seem
potential
like
for
they're-
it to be a legitimately interesting competitive game to take a little bit seriously, but I don't think it's ever going to be as competitive as CS:GO, and I don't think they're trying for that.
yeah.
I think that they just want more of like there are comparisons to draw with MOBAs. Not everything about MOBAs are terrible. And I guess it's kind of like if you're not playing on the professional level, ranked CS:GO too. I don't know what I'm saying here, but there's a way to do ranked and competitive multiplayer without trying to pigeonhole it into being an esport, and they haven't really given much indication that they're going to try to push that overly hard.
Yeah. I just
They seem to have learned lessons from Heroes of the Storm.
I'm really curious about what the future of this game is like, and I'm also curious about how like we're still in the Overwatch craze right now. Like people just constantly talking about it, a huge amount of people playing it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if people are going to get burnt out on it really quickly or not.
I think it's got the Undertale problem already, where it's just got
The community is not
it's
very
it's
flattering.
got that catchy X factor with lots of characters with loud personalities, and it's a catchy game, lots of catchy lines, lots of
Like
wrong-
die.
That is so good. I love Reaper. He's so funny. Really, is anything funnier than a guy
I agree. It's funny. I
teleporting
just don't know if I'm
behind you
laughing
and
with them
spinning
or
around
at
with
them.
Does it matter? Just laugh.
Yes.
No, it doesn't matter. And you know what? I would be shocked if,
There's definitely some self-awareness there, but
I'd be shocked if the writers at Blizzard were not aware that he's maybe a little over the top.
I'm sure they're aware, but I just don't know how much tongue is in the cheek there. I don't know. But I'm really curious as to the future of that fucking game, and I really want to see how they monetize it, because they're going to try to milk that for every penny it's worth.
Somebody in the chat, please create some 3D pornography of Reaper tongue-kissing Roadhog so we can find out exactly how much tongue is in the cheek.
God.
God, there's so much porn of Overwatch
I've
already.
heard.
Like,
I haven't seen, luckily.
it must be terabytes already.
Yeah.
Somebody said Brew must have never played a MOBA. Everything he touches on is MOBA Meta 101. I don't play MOBAs, so you're correct.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, a lot of it's MOBA. I mean, the way that you unlock the fucking ults and all that stuff is all very MOBA. But I would not call the game a MOBA, because it's fundamentally different. Even if you don't play MOBAs, you know, like, okay, there's not the 3-lane structure, there's not the creeps and the metagame of like controlling the map and all that crap. Like it's
Battleborn is a first-person MOBA. Battleborn has actual creeps walking around and towers, and it's stupid as shit, and matches last 40 minutes or whatever.
Incredible how much of a failure Battleborn is. I knew it was going to be a failure competing against Overwatch, which was just obviously objectively better, but it is just like the moment Overwatch the beta came out, people just stopped talking about Battleborn.
Gearbox can do no right.
Oh God, they have fans. Gearbox has lots of fans. You know, they can still create another whatchamacallit, the co-op. Yeah, they can make They can make a Borderlands 3. They will make a Borderlands 3, and it'll sell well, because people don't understand humor. No, I mean, I hope that most people don't buy those games for the humor, because dear God. But all right,
a lot of people do.
enough of Overwatch. I have at least one news thing. If you're done with your bullshit.
Excuse me. This is my esport.
This is breaking news today. I'm sure maybe you've heard of it. It's finally happened. Metal Gear Solid is a pachinko machine. It's a Metal Gear Solid 3 pachinko machine where it appears by the trailer, which is all in Japanese, so I have no idea what it's saying. It appears that you might fight the bosses as you play pachinko. So you go through the fear and the fury, and then there's the boss at the end who gives you a speech in ultra high resolution, which was really weird looking. They all have like very high resolution faces. It looked really, really unnerving.
Too realistic.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
Without actually, it looked like the textures were so detailed, but everything was so unnatural and stiff. It's like very weird to look at.
It's like they still use the Metal Gear Solid 3, but just added it's like the HD texture mods you get, where it's like trying its best with a really old engine. Yeah.
Where like the number of polygons are the same, but just these super high res textures. I mean, these had high poly counts, but it seemed like they were animated the same way.
Yeah.
This was an inevitability.
Yep. I mean, everyone knew it was going to happen, because they were going to hold on to the license, and they were
just
going to
a
make
matter of when.
Everyone knew.
And this is when. I'm a little sad that I missed it. Wish it could have come out a little earlier in Vegas so I could, fight the boss. I did see an ad on one of the screens in one of the casinos for Konami Pachinko. And it didn't say much else. It just said Konami Pachinko.
Interesting.
And I never saw any. But you know what I did see? The ultimate gaming experience. It was in basically every casino there. It was the Big Bang Theory slot machine.
Wow.
It is the largest slot machine I've ever seen, besides this massive novelty one in the Mandalay Bay. But it's about the height of 4 grown men standing, foot to head. It's massive. huge high resolution screen, and it's got all the Big Bang Theory characters like
Why?
cool pose, and like the Indian one's holding like his Magic the Gathering cards up to the camera, and
Does it say Bazinga?
it does. And you know what? I don't want to fuck up this quote, but you basically get the entire Big Bang Theory experience in one perfect gaming experience. Okay, yeah, here it is. Spin the giant Bazinga wheel for the jackpot. They call it the giant Bazinga wheel. And the different, like, instead of the 7s that scroll by, it just says Bazinga.
Great. I'm surprised. I mean, are there a lot of licensed slot machines?
Yeah,
Okay,
a ton.
I would
There was
assume so.
A Game of Thrones slot machine
Yeah.
that just, like, showed clips from the show, and,
That's so
lots
weird.
of movie-based slot machines, Wheel of Fortune slot machine.
Are there not a lot of? I would assume that the mobile gaming market and slot machines would have a huge Venn diagram overlap as far as like licensing and stuff. It seems to me there should be Angry Birds and Bejeweled and all that stuff. Those should all be licensed. All should be some kind of gambling.
There was some
machine.
kind of Bejeweled-looking thing. I don't know if it was actually Bejeweled, but
It was probably the same kind of game.
yeah, there were.
But
I don't even know
luck-based.
how it would work because,
Yeah.
you know, it's not. That's not how a slot machine works. But I think it's one of those deals where you play a slot machine and then it's just doing shit up here that's like vaguely correlated to what's happening.
That's what the Metal Gear Solid machine looked like. It looked like it had a big screen over it in which it shows you clips as you get balls or however pachinko works. There's some other news.
Other news?
There is. I know that there's. I think Xbox. This is either leaked or announced. Xbox is going to do a PS4 style, more powerful version, and I think they're also going to do an Xbox Slim kind of thing, which basically points towards this generation being like the end of console launches, where it's going to be like, okay, now we're gonna iterate. Now, I think that's the direction at least they're trying to go in.
Which it's certainly cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
cheaper to just have a strong architecture and just keep improving the hardware. Like, there's no need to develop a
I
new
imagine they
cell
would sell a lot
processor
more
every
machines
6
that way,
years.
because then you just have a constant flow.
Yeah, it's like,
I don't know.
it's kind of like smartphones. I'm guessing it might be on a 3 times longer life cycle, but you know.
Well, doesn't affect me because I only play on the PC.
PC gamers unite.
And Xbox is going what appears to be some lengths of effort to merge the Xbox and the PC into one thing. So that's good for PC gamers. Even if you don't give a shit about Xbox games, at least you have the option.
Skippy, it's only good for Windows gamers. On my Steam OS box, I can't play my favorite game, Quantum Break.
True.
Quantum Breaking Bad.
Other news. I'm trying to think. I feel like, we've been gone for 2 weeks. There's got to be more news. And E3's coming up.
Have to be, yeah. There's more news coming at E3.
There's a new Call of Duty, and they're all mad at the trailer. No, we talked about that last time.
I saw a different movie I forgot to mention. I'll just talk about that for a second. If you think of anything, then go for it. I saw X-Men Apocalypse today. And let me just get this out of the way. Superhero movies...
You're done with them.
Well, no. That's about all I need to say. There's too many of them.
Yes,
We've now moved past that.
Get rid of them.
Yeah, so it was the most over-the-top movie I've ever seen. Absolutely ridiculous in the scale. It wasn't a great movie. I'm not trying to say that right now. But just like... Okay, so like the Marvel movies, the mainline Marvel movies, they go for like that fun, daring adventure tone. And then there's the DC ones that are like, okay, we're going to philosophize and be dark, grim dark for 2.5 hours. X-Men Apocalypse was just like a ridiculous superhero movie where they're just using their powers constantly, and like Magneto rips every building on the planet Earth up from the ground, and
on the entire planet,
millions of people die, and
damn,
like the villain is literally God. it's ridiculous.
Wow.
It doesn't totally work. I'm not trying to say that, but it's it's a middle ground between the super serious, let's wallow in despair, and the cheesy fun. It was just a straight up, there's a big threat and the superheroes gotta save the day. Not something I needed to see. It was a matinee showing, half price, why not?
That's weird because the last one I didn't love, but had some good stuff in it. I don't know if it was the last one or the one before it actually, but one of those past ones where they're all young.
Yeah.
It was kind of small scale. Like it was just them using their powers to do relatively small missions and stuff.
I'm just going to spoil it because
window.
None of you should care. So cover your ears if you really care. There's a scene where Apocalypse, he uses his psychic whatever to get into the Cerebro machine that can connect Professor X to all the people around the world. And he uses that to mind control thousands of people all across the world to launch every nuke straight up into space all at the same time.
Okay.
It's a big movie.
Does he realize that there's a bunch of nukes on planes?
On subs, every nuclear weapon in the world.
But you can't launch a nuclear bomb from a plane to space.
Maybe he turned it upside down.
That was a huge part of our nuclear strategy, was putting bombs on planes.
Okay, I'm sorry that...
Are you telling me the superhero movie
Let's
that makes
get realistic
sense?
here. Yeah. I don't have... It's just... I don't even feel anything about it.
Yeah.
There was some cool scenes.
That's how I feel after leaving every superhero movie ever.
Yeah.
I don't feel anything.
Exactly.
I don't feel feelings. I'm sick of them too. Yeah. And
it wasn't a bad movie. None of them really are, except for Batman vs Superman stuff.
Yeah, which
I
I
will
can
never see
assume
that.
is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to see it. So, but the X-Men movies were all right. The first one or two, I don't remember.
This was the best X-Men movie
Okay.
by a long shot.
Whatever.
But that's not really saying all that much.
I apparently have weird taste in superhero movies because I really liked the Wolverine movie that everyone says is bad. Well, not the Wolverine movie that everyone says is bad, but the other Wolverine, the most recent Wolverine movie, where he goes to Japan.
What?
And he has an adventure in Japan. Yeah.
What?
It ends really badly. The last third of it is terrible. But
I didn't see that. I don't even know
but the
what that is.
first 2/3 of it make up for the last third. He has a fight on a bullet train, and so he's on top of a bullet train and it's going super fast, and there's a bunch of thugs that are trying to get at him, and the wind is so powerful that they'll jump up to attack each other, and then they'll fly down the train and tumble across the top of it, and he'll have to use his claws to stop himself and stuff. And there was just a lot of clever shit. It was one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, actually, is that train scene. And I think that's maybe the only reason I actually like the movie is that one scene. But that's how superhero movies are.
There's some of that in this one where, it's the kind of stuff that when you were a little kid, and if someone was asking you what you wanted in a superhero movie, you would tell them I want all the superheroes, and they're all going to be shooting lasers and teleporting around and shooting all kinds of shit, and Magneto's going to lift up every building and kill everybody. There was a lot more powers in this movie than any superpowers in this movie than any other superhero movie I've ever seen. I think a little kid would like it a lot.
Kids like most movies, it turns out, actually.
What?
It turns out kids like most movies.
That's
you kinda
probably
can't
true.
go wrong.
Well, they probably wouldn't like The Big Short.
True. Well, all right. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about. I was relying on chat to hopefully give me some ideas about news, but nobody said anything, so there can't be anything that important.
When is E3? Why don't we figure that out?
2 weeks from now or 1 week from now. Soon, ish.
We should be seeing the new Zelda. They said that's going to be there.
Yep, that's the only Nintendo thing that's going to be there.
The only Nintendo thing?
last I heard, that was it. That was what they were bringing to E3.
Well, I hope.
And apparently they would
there's
do like
more.
a 10-hour demo or something.
That's
I don't
too
know.
much. A
is
10-hour
too
demo
much.
would be too much.
It is way too much, but I think that's what they said, or maybe it was 8 hours.
And what else? Oh, Last Guardian. If we don't see Last Guardian, it's time to get worried.
It's canceled officially if we don't see it.
After being like
Wouldn't
robotic.
that be incredible?
It would be very strange. I don't think it's gonna happen, but
I think it'll come out. I'm not too worried about it.
but is Neo looked kind of cool. I didn't get to play the demo, but did you ever
Neo.
see that? It looks kind of like Dark Souls, but it's like samurai. A samurai
Oh
ninja
yeah,
guy
yeah.
Back in like Japan.
I thought that came
feudal
out.
Japan. No, it was a demo
Oh,
on
okay.
PSN.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people talking about that.
Oh,
Seemed alright.
this is a little thing. I just wanted to mention this about Uncharted 4 before we move on. Best looking game I've ever played. The graphics, I'm not talking about art direction. I just mean like graphical fidelity. And I know that PCs are far more powerful than a
Technically
PS4
more
is.
powerful,
Yes. However, the graphics engine they made is astounding. Like some of the best lighting I've ever seen. You could probably nitpick, but just overall, what they managed to show on the screen is just unlike anything. You really
It
gotta
definitely,
just see it.
from what I've seen from the videos, it looks really good. There was one video that I saw a bunch of people freaking out about. I think it was like a Reddit thread or something, and I don't even know why I'm bringing this up because it's so uneventful. But it was just funny how people were freaking out about this, and it seemed like the simplest thing ever. There was like a hill with rocks
the
on it,
rocks. Yep.
and someone shot one of the rocks, and then they all fell down. And people were like, "Oh my god, look how video games have advanced!" And it's just like, it was just like a really simple, like they were just
Right.
sliding down the hill. Like I don't know, it looked fine, but
That's the thing, though. There's lots of little touches like that
sure,
where they don't. The game, people on Reddit make a big deal about it, but the game doesn't shove a lot of the little touches in your face. Like the shadows on water. I didn't even know that was like lacking in so many games, but they look exactly like a shadow on a shallow pool of water would look on a
Do you
really
remember-
sharply hot day.
Do you remember your reaction to first seeing Crisis?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the water in
Yes.
Crisis and how fucking mind blowing that was? Where
Yep.
it had the refraction, like the rainbow and everything, and it was like, holy fuck, it was amazing. It still looks good, by the way, but
Does
like,
Crisis
people-
3 look all that much better? Is that what? Maybe somebody else can tell me this. What is the standard for like benchmarking right now? That's not like a
What does it say?
benchmarking tool. What game is the gold standard for?
we've kind of moved
quality?
past. Like there was a very short period of time around Crisis where it was like, oh, this is the best looking game now, and this is the best looking game now. But nowadays, it's kind of like it's so iffy.
There still has to be one. Like even if people don't make as big a deal about it, there still has got to be that game that everybody who really cares about this kind of thing is like, oh yeah, that's the one that will kill your system.
I don't know. Are there? I mean, there's not a lot of system killing games nowadays. Usually, the system killing games are just the games that are like super large scale, like Arma or something, where it's like it's how much shit you can shove in one map. Dwarf Fortress, yeah. 2 people answered Dwarf Fortress, but fucking Crisis, yeah. So the weird thing about Crisis 3 isn't mind blowing at all, or Crisis 2 for that matter. I've heard people say that they actually downgraded. I doubt that's true, but they didn't make any. The improvements they made weren't significant enough to matter really, and it looked to me like what hurt them also is like the environments weren't as
Interesting.
you couldn't show it off as well with those environments. But
That was the thing about Crisis 2. I played that. I didn't finish it because it was not fun. But
yeah,
it's just a city.
yeah,
That is not what that game
exactly.
is good at.
Like why not keep it? I don't know. That was weird.
It should have been kind of like a Far Cry thing where it's
Yeah.
this other, slightly different, awesome outdoor place.
But the crazy thing is that Crisis 1 still looks like you could come out with a AAA game today that looked like Crisis 1 and it would be acceptable. We really haven't moved very far. I don't feel like, except with games like Uncharted 4 where it's all like maybe stylistically is the wrong word, but they've created a consistent feel to technically it might not be that astounding because it's obviously on slower hardware, but they've managed to make it look good through tricks, smoke and mirrors almost. But yeah,
that's definitely
man,
what they did
graphics.
a lot with Uncharted 4.
But there's also some things that I feel like we could make look really good, but that we don't bother with a lot. Water is one of those things. Crysis made really good looking water. You never see that in games because what's the point in spending all your time making really good looking water? Whatever. Video games.
Somebody, not video games, I'll keep it short. Somebody asked anything more to say about Berserk really fast. I got caught up. Many volumes. There's one more volume coming out in just a couple weeks, but then that's it for like 2 more years. This guy works so slowly. It's like 8 months a chapter. He's been going since the 80s. And so now I think I'm at that point that after they release that new volume, it's just going to be one of those things that I forget about for years at a time and then come back to and, oh, okay, there's 2 more chapters. I only, changed jobs twice and moved to a different city and got married, but at least I have 2 more chapters of Berserk to read.
How long does it take you to finish 2 chapters?
Well, I can definitely see myself rereading, but...
Sure, but I'm talking about, you read through it and you're like, okay, I'm done with that right now. How long is the first read-through
of a chapter? You can finish several volumes in a sitting, and volumes are made up of many chapters, like a dozen chapters or something. So
that's just the funny thing about. I mean, I don't think that this is a flaw or anything, but the funny thing about graphic novels and comics and stuff is that you do get through them so much faster.
Yeah.
There's more to take in visually and everything. You can go back and look at stuff, but if there's only one chapter coming out every 6 months, then you're waiting 6 months for a quick all right, and you sit down for 5 minutes to finish it. That's crazy.
The ratio of the amount of time it takes to produce a chapter of Berserk versus how long it takes to consume it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
People question whether he'll ever finish. I think he will. He's in his 40s.
It's the George R.R. Martin of...
It seems like, no, that guy will never finish that ever. He's in his 70s and 1 trillion pounds obese, and he's gonna die.
There's no incentive for him to finish it either, because everyone wants the TV show more than the books anyway.
Kentaro Miura is a healthy Japanese diet guy in his 40s. They have the longest lifespans in the world.
Yeah.
And, it seems, he said a couple years ago that he was 60% done with the story. From about the arc of the way things have been going, that seems about accurate. We're probably a little past that now. He has time to finish it. So unless he gets hit by a bus, then I think he can do it.
All right. Fingers crossed.
But it'll be a long grind. Okay.
That's it, I think.
If we don't have anything else to talk about, then thank you, party people, for listening to the only party podcast on the Party Tube. Party on.